thing. We want to welcome to the program Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. And he may have been on with us before, but I think Senator Cruz making his first appearance on AFR here, at least on our program, Today's Issues. How you doing?
Gentlemen, it's good to be with you. I hope you guys had a wonderful Christmas and a really blessed New Year's.
We come as friends, Ted. We're not going to beat you up like every other media.
I am grateful for that, and you know it's uplifting.
And not just the media, other Republicans.
Sometimes. Yeah. Never know who your friends are till you get to Washington, I guess. Who was it that said...
you know, what is it Harry Truman said about Washington? If you want a friend in Washington, buy a dog.
Buy a dog. That's right. Well, listen, thanks for being on with us. Tim Wildman here with Ed Vitagliano. We've been a fan, and we appreciate what you've stood for in Washington, D.C., for family, faith, and freedom, as our good friend Tony Perkins likes to say. What's going to, by the way, I'm just curious, what you went to Washington to make a difference and to take a stand for the things that many Americans believe in. Have you been a little surprised, Senator, by the intensity of the battle, I guess I would call it?
Well, it has certainly been a whirlwind. But I'll tell you, more than anything else, I've been inspired because, I mean, listen, we're facing enormous challenges. I think every one of us knows that what's happened to this country right now, these are not normal times in politics. We are at the edge of a cliff. And if we keep, the most common thing I hear when I go back to Texas is men and women across the state, they grab me by the shoulder and they look me in the eyes and they say, Ted, I'm scared. I'm scared for this country. I'm scared we're losing our freedoms. We're losing. My kids and grandkids are not going to have the opportunity, the freedom that we've been blessed to have. And that is absolutely true. But the reason I'm inspired is I am convinced we are seeing people all across this country wake up and stand up and say, we want our freedom back. We want to get back to the principles that made this country great. And that is having a huge impact. It scares the living daylights out of Washington, out of the career politicians in both parties who are in Washington. But I think it's absolutely inspiring to see so many millions of Americans standing up for the principles and values that have made our country strong.
Senator, why should I certainly believe what you're saying, but why does it scare the career politicians in Washington, D.C., that ordinary citizens want to get involved and they want to see our freedoms preserved? Is this just a force they can't control? I mean, what is it about this movement that is scaring these folks in D.C.?
It's a great question. Unfortunately, a lot of it comes down to power and money. It seems that when people are in office too long, more and more of them, all they can think about is staying in office, holding on to the perks of power. You know, there's an old joke that politics is Hollywood for ugly people.
That's a good joke.
There's an awful lot of truth to it. But, you know, I've said for a long time, I think the biggest political divide in this country is not between Republicans and Democrats. It is between career politicians in Washington, in both parties, and the American people. And the most important shift we can do to pull this country back from this fiscal and economic cliff, to get back to our constitutional liberties, the most important shift we can do is to make D.C. listen to the American people. And you know, I got to tell you, where we are right now reminds me a great deal of the late 1970s. And y'all remember the late 1970s. They were not happy times. We had miserable economic conditions. We had the same failed economic policies we're seeing now, out-of-control spending and taxes and regulations. We had malaise. We had feckless foreign policy that was jeopardizing our national security and making the world a more dangerous place. And what we saw in the late 1970s was a grassroots revolution. Millions of Americans came together in the Reagan Revolution and said, there is a better way. We can get back to the principles that made this country strong. And what I find so inspiring, That same thing is happening right now. Just like then, millions of Americans are saying what we're doing isn't working, and we want to get back to the principles of liberty that have made this country so strong.
Talking to Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Senator, as an example, what you're talking about, the out-of-control spending, and we could spend a lot of time on this, but just sort of a case in point of what happened yesterday, as I understand, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the president and the Democrats wanted to vote to extend the unemployment benefits for the 14th time, I think, to some Americans who are out of work. The Republicans, as I understand it, wanted to say, okay, if you want to do that, then it's not in the budget, so tell us where we're going to cut in the budget to make room for this this new bill. And these new and the Democrats said, we're not going to do that. We're just going to add it to the debt.
Right.
Is that what happened?
No, that's exactly right. And the spending and debt, they're out of control.
Right.
I mean, in 5 years, our national debt has gone from $10 trillion to $17 trillion. It's larger than the size of our whole economy. And, every bit as tragically, you look at unemployment. Listen, people are hurting in this country, and they're hurting because the economic policies that this administration is pursuing, they aren't working. And millions of people, what we need to be doing is not creating dependency and just extending unemployment over and over and over again. What we need to be doing is stopping the job-killing policies that are making it so difficult for people to find work. And we need to repeal every word of Obamacare. We need to build the Keystone Pipeline, develop our energy resources, which those two things, just those alone, have the potential to generate millions of high-paying jobs. But Washington doesn't want to do that. They just want to keep people dependent because it keeps them in power, and it doesn't solve the fundamental problem, which is why the American people are so frustrated that no one in this town is listening. Look, most Americans, they don't want a government check. They want a job. They want to provide for their kids. They want to stand on their own feet and have the dignity that comes from going to work and providing a better future for your kids. And Washington is just making it harder and harder and harder for people to do that.
You're really not supposed to be telling all this secrets on the Good Old Boys Club. I don't know if you know that or not, but you're telling what really happens in Washington, and a lot of folks who've been there for a long time don't like you telling how the story is. But Senator, listen, thanks so much for your time. We asked you for 10 minutes. You've given us 10 minutes. We appreciate it very much. And we hope that, you can be back with us from time to time here on our program on American Family Radio to talk to folks across the country. We have 200 stations and a lot of people who admire what you've been able to do in Washington, you and some others up there who are taking a stand for our future, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate your leadership and everything you're doing, and I want to say to all of your listeners, thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your prayers. I'll tell you, Heidi and I, we are lifted up in intercession by believers across the country, and it means an enormous amount and gives us strength every day. And I want to just kind of wrap up with a word of encouragement to everyone, that as dire as the threats are, the incredible movement of people standing up is reason for hope and inspiration. And more than anything, telling the stories of the American people, mobilizing the American people is how we're going to pull this country back. We've launched a national website, MakeDCListen.org, MakeDCListen.org. Let me encourage every one of your listeners. Go to MakeDCListen.org and upload your story. There's a portal there where you can tell your story about Obamacare, how it's impacting your job, how it's impacting your health care. But what we're trying to do is tell the stories of the American people and help give voice to the millions of Americans who want to get back to our constitutional liberties, to the principles at our founding that have made this country a shining city on the hill. And I am so encouraged by what millions of Americans are doing, and I want to thank each of you for your commitment to religious liberty, to our constitutional rights, to the tremendous unlimited potential of free men and free women to work for and achieve the American dream.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Senator Ted Cruz joining us from Washington, D.C. of Texas. Let me just tell you something, Ed.